Oh my lord. Oh my fucking lord. Oh my lord, where?
I don't know.
What are you
look
doing?
at it.
Where? Where? No, you're fucking kidding.
Is it Stanford?
Stanford.
Yay.
¿Cómo puede ser, Dios?
Man, it's been over 7 months since that day and I'm still super blown away. Getting in was 100% not in the playbook, but since it happened, I thought it'd be appropriate for me to get in front of the camera and talk about how I think I got into Stanford. So I'm going to share my stats, extracurriculars, essays, with some advice sprinkled in. So let's get started with how I was admitted. I was admitted to Stanford late last year through a program called National Match by QuestBridge that aims at giving low-income students an opportunity to win full rides to top universities in the country. Here are some of the notable schools. I luckily won the full ride.
¿Cómo puede ser, Dios?
Post-production Alex here. I'm just now noticing that I never explained why I said which one during my reaction video. Well, in essence, with QuestBridge, you're allowed to rank up to 12 schools. I ranked Stanford, MIT, and Brown in that order. So basically what happened was that I opened the application portal. It said that I had gotten into a school, but I did not know which school until I actually clicked on another separate file and opened it up and saw what school. So that's why you see that little delay. Anyways, hope that clears up a couple things in case you were having questions, and back to the video. I would love to stand here and talk about the National Match, the program that gave me my full ride, but I would rather focus on more general advice. Luckily, I do have a video talking about the National Match that'll be linked up here so you can check it out. Anyone who is a low-income senior, as in their families make less than $65K a year, should apply this summer. One last thing before we talk about my stats, I promise. This video is a remake. I made a very similar video months back. It was actually my first video, but it was executed so horribly, like the editing was just awful. You should feel a little more confident about yourself. So I thought it would be appropriate to remake it, but in a way where it's actually watchable, and totally not because these types of videos do well. Now let's talk about my stats. First of all, GPA. I ended high school with a 4.5 weighted GPA and a 4.0 unweighted GPA. My 4.5 was as a result of taking 15 AP classes. The list is right here. It's just too much to read, but feel free to pause and look at them. And I took the AP test for 13 of these classes. The list is right here for all of them. Again, feel free to pause and look at them. I only have 10 of the scores because I'm still waiting on 3 of them this summer, but just to be brief, I got 8 5s and 2 4s. My 2 4s coming from Physics 1 and Chemistry because I'm just apparently trash at science. I think the 2 most important scores on my application were the AP Computer Science ones because I plan to major in computer science and I informed Stanford about that, so I'm sure it helped. So I recommend that you do something similar if there is an AP class offered in your field. Now, standardized testing scores. I got a 31 on my ACT, which is not that great, especially since I took it 3 times and got the same score every freaking time.
So I never improved.
Now let's talk advice. I recommend that you take the majority of the challenging courses offered at your school because prestigious schools like Stanford are going to receive a list of all the courses offered at your school, and they kind of want to see that you challenged yourself. They base it off of what was offered, so if there are only 2 AP courses offered at a small school and you take both of them, it's almost the equivalent of taking 10 AP classes at a school that offers 10. I say almost because Stanford will still want to see if the 2 AP course students challenge themselves in other ways, particularly extracurriculars, which we will talk about in a bit. After challenging myself with my classes, the next thing I tried to do was get a good standardized test score, which I obviously failed to do since a 31 is below average at Stanford. But I stopped worrying about the score since I was doing well in my classes and on my AP tests. That being said, if you're not doing too hot on one part of your application, try to make up for it by focusing on the things that you are really good at so that you can make up for lost ground. Now let's talk about one way to make up for lost ground, your extracurriculars. This should be quick because I did not do a lot of activities and the ones I did do took up a lot of my time. I have participated in a Latino youth group since the 6th grade. I co-founded a mental health group my junior year at my school, and I have participated in academic decathlon since my sophomore year. But my biggest extracurricular was participating in math modeling competitions where I worked with a team to create formulas that would predict something. For example, my sophomore year we built a formula that predicted the average cost of an HIV vaccine based on promising trials. We then had to submit a 20-page paper outlining our methodology, setup, and results to actuaries who typically work with insurance companies. That same year, we progressed to the national finals of the competition where 9 out of 100 and some teams qualified. Only the top 4 teams were announced and given scholarship money. My team did not win anything, and that was the start of 3 years of winning absolutely nothing in these competitions.
FML.
Regardless, I continued participating, and I started to experience a little more success by qualifying for different types of competitions. In terms of advice, I recommend that you pick a few extracurriculars that you are going to stick to for your high school career. Dedication to a few activities is a lot more impressive than trying to do everything, because you can become a very important part of those few activities. Meanwhile, it's almost impossible to progress in activities if you have 5 or 8 more going on. For example, I tried to play club soccer, and I was pretty trash, as you can see. And it ate up a lot of my time, and it was not particularly helpful. Another piece of advice is that you pick an extracurricular that's going to outshine all others. In my case, I spent 3 years doing math modeling competitions and qualifying for different international and national competitions, and that definitely outshines everything else. That being said, I don't want anyone to think that you need to do the same, as in qualify for international or national competitions. For example, you can start a mental health group, and in some ways it's way better than qualifying for fancy competitions, because you can have a much larger impact on your community or society. At the end of the day, Stanford wants to see that you're motivated and driven, so seeing some achievement is one way to go, or trying to build something from the ground up is another way to go. Now let's move on to essays, and let's start with some tips. My number 1 tip when it comes to essays is that you start early. I cannot stress this one enough. I started my essays the summer before senior year, and it gave me time to brainstorm a lot of ideas and narrow down my list of topics and ideas to the ones that were actually good. You don't want to find yourself rushing, because you're likely to be swaying and switching between topics, and at the end of the day compromising just to get the essay done, and end up with an essay that is not a good representation of you. Tip number 2, focus on something that is unique to you. It does not matter if someone else has had a similar experience. Focus on something that's unique to you, because you're more likely to have tons of ideas and ways to approach writing about it. I wrote about how I worked and helped at my parents' grocery store since the age of 8, and how that helped me build discipline and character. I'm going to read the first couple lines of my essay so you get an idea of how it's supposed to be unique to you, but first, here is the prompt that I was answering. We are interested in learning more about you and the context in which you have grown up, formed your aspirations, and accomplished your academic successes. Please describe the factors and challenges that have most shaped your personal life and aspirations. How have these factors helped you to grow? Note that the prompt is unique to the QuestBridge application, so you may not see something similar if you're applying through the Common App, but I still think that this can be helpful. Now the essay. Many may argue the immigrant experience is that of financial difficulty and the pursuit of a better life, and ours was not much different. My father worked 2 jobs, and my mother worked 1 for over 10 years so they could achieve their dream of opening a grocery store. Growing up, I remember hearing of my parents' dream and the name of the store, La Centroamericana. 3 years after hearing the first mention of the store, my parents took a risk and invested time and money into their dream. In May of 2011, La Centroamericana opened its doors, and with it, 9 years of my childhood. So in this first bit, I set up the location, and I set up the importance by talking about how it impacted my childhood for a long time. Cutting to the next paragraph, I then start to talk about my growth. Although my work at the store has become repetitive over the years, my interactions with customers have taught me a key lesson about life. I learned the ability to smile and be cheerful, even when I feel down, which has allowed me to keep my head raised high and persevere even when I struggle. The next paragraph lists an example, and after that I talk about 2 other ways that the store has impacted me. That's my style. I like to lay the foundation, and then I like to talk about the different ways something impacted me. That being said, because of the way I write, I don't 100% move linearly. Most of you are probably not going to choose to do this, but it's something to consider. If you want to read my full essay, I will leave a link down below in the description so you can take your time with it. I recommend not copying anything, because it's only going to hurt your chances by not talking about the real you. Once you finish the brainstorming process and focus on a topic that is unique to you, all that is left is the storytelling, aka how are you going to present the topic? Is it going to be a linear story, or are you going to set it up like mine? Honestly, I can't give you advice on how to write an essay. I think everyone should do it in their own way, in their own unique style, so me giving you advice I don't think particularly is going to aid you in that. If anything, you should just dedicate time to working on your writing and getting better at it, because it's going to be very important. How you tell your story is often overlooked, and it can give you an edge over students who have better or similar stats, so let's talk about it. Last year when I was applying, I was in a group chat with thousands of students who had great ACT scores, great SAT scores, and not to mention high-level classes under their tool belt, but they were all afraid of applying because they were afraid of being rejected. And it was the same for me. Before applying, I had a feeling that my application was not going to stand out because I was comparing myself to the same students in the group chat who had better AP scores than me, who had more volunteering hours than me, or who had better standardized test scores than me. The number one thing that helped me get over my fear was accepting the fact that I was not going to stand out because of my scores or because of my classes. Rather, I was going to stand out based on the story I was going to tell through my essays and my extracurriculars. See, I've been reading dozens of motivational type books as of late, and the one thing that will keep me reading until the end is the storytelling. Let's say I pick up a book on how to be consistent in life or something weird like that, and the author is Warren Buffett. Who else than one of the most consistent investors of all time? But the flow in writing is mediocre. Will I continue to read it? Most likely not, and the only reason I would continue to read it is because it's freaking Warren Buffett. Meanwhile, if the storytelling is great, I don't care who wrote it, I'll continue reading. Translating this back to the context of applying to colleges, the story you tell through your essays and extracurriculars is a big factor that determines whether or not you'll be considered for entry. I mean, if you're applying to Stanford, most students are gonna have the same stats as you, assuming that you're a pretty good student. This means you need to find every possible way to give yourself an edge, and essays is the number one way to do it. For example, I talk about my motivation and drive through the context of having grown up at a grocery store and through the context of being a minority. And in my extracurriculars, I think I express the same drive through the dedication I've had to a few activities. Ultimately, I think it's how I express myself through my writing and through my extracurriculars that gave me an edge over other students and ultimately gave me an entry into Stanford. Obviously, I won't know the 100% the exact reason why I got in or the reasons until hopefully later on in my college career, but for now, that's the best I can do. Thank you for tuning in today. If you have any questions, leave them down below and I may make a part 2 addressing them all. If you enjoyed, hit the like button down below and subscribe, and until next time, adios.